In John chapter 9, Jesus heals a man who was blind from birth after his declaration at the Feast of Tabernacles about being living water. And in the process of that act, he also declared this. He said, "While I am in the world, I am the light of the world." Maybe you remember when the disciples of John the Baptist came to ask if Jesus was the one or should they look for another. And Jesus sent a message back to John the Baptist. We find it in Matthew chapter 11 and verse 5. Jesus said, "Tell him, the blind receive sight, the lame walk, those who have leprosy are cleansed, the deaf hear, the dead are raised, and the good news is proclaimed to the poor." You see, sometime in the previous centuries, Jewish leaders or rabbis had sat down and put miracles into two categories. Ones that anyone sent by God could perform, a prophet, a priest, a king, and so on, and ones that only the Messiah, the one sent by God, would be able to perform. And they identified four of these as messianic miracles, as they came to be called. And whenever one of these was alleged to have happened, the Pharisees would need to investigate. The following are the four miracles: healing of a leper, healing of someone born blind, raising the dead, and casting out a mute demon. And so this blind man's healing was, of course, just such a miracle. He wasn't blind because of some degenerative disease or horrible accident. He had been blind from the moment he was born. But the Pharisees didn't believe that Jesus was the Messiah, and so they needed to somehow discredit what had happened here. They were nervous. Remember, they had gone on record saying they didn't believe that Jesus was from God. And so they grilled the man who was healed. And then they grilled his parents, who were very evasive in their answers because they didn't want to get kicked out of the synagogue. They said, "Now ask him yourself. He's old enough to answer." And then the Pharisees went back to the man again. And in John 9:24 and 25, it says this: "A second time, they summoned the man who had been blind. 'Give glory to God by telling the truth,' they said. 'We know this man is a sinner.' And he replied, 'Whether he is a sinner or not, I really don't know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see.' So they ask him to explain again, and the man gets impatient. 'I already told you, but you didn't listen. Why do you want to know? Do you want to become his disciples too?' Well, they didn't like that very much. They insulted the man, and then they very forcefully declared that they didn't even know where this Jesus comes from. The man answered this way. He said, 'Now, that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly person who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing.'" Isn't that great? I mean, you've got to smile when this man basically says to them, "What is wrong with you? Are you idiots? You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes? You're supposed to be the experts when it comes to this stuff." Well, Jesus brought light into this man's darkness in a very powerful way. And when Jesus told the disciples of John to go back and tell him that these miracles were happening, he was giving them the affirmation that he was indeed the one, the Messiah. And now, healing the man who was born blind, he provided unequivocal confirmation. He didn't just say, "I am the light of the world." He proved it by bringing light into this man's world who had known nothing but inky black darkness from birth. Can you imagine that? I mean, imagine what it means to only know darkness and then experience light. Well, maybe you can. Maybe physically you understand blindness, or maybe mentally or spiritual darkness is something that you struggle with, oppression and heaviness that feels like blackness all around you. Friend, Jesus is ready, willing, and able to bring light into your darkness today. And all you need to do is believe, and then let him bring his marvelous light into your life.